CEO's little girl ran to Janitor. "They beat my mom. She's dying." His secret skill shocked everyone. The little girl's white dress was streaked with blood that wasn't hers, and her bare knees were scraped raw from where she had fallen running through the parking garage. She burst through the revolving doors of Meridian Tower screaming one word over and over, "Help," until her voice cracked and her lungs gave out, and she collapsed onto the polished lobby floor, gasping like someone who had just crawled out of a burning building. Nobody moved. The receptionist froze behind her desk. The security guard reached for his radio and then didn't use it. Two suited executives stepped around the child as though she were a piece of luggage someone had carelessly left behind. And then a man in gray coveralls, pushing a mop across the far end of the lobby, dropped everything and ran. His name was Daniel Reeves, and nobody in that building knew the first true thing about him. If this story already has your heart beating faster, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below, share it with someone who needs to believe in kindness today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, because this channel exists for people who still believe that goodness lives in unexpected places and that second chances are never truly wasted. Daniel had worked the morning cleaning shift at Meridian Tower for 11 months. He was the man people looked through rather than at, the one who refilled the hand soap dispensers before anyone noticed they were empty, who buffed the elevator floors between the hours of midnight and 5, who ate his lunch alone on the concrete steps behind the loading dock because the break room always felt like a place he hadn't been invited into. He was 38 years old, broad-shouldered, with quiet dark eyes and hands that were rough from work. He didn't talk much. He didn't complain. He showed up every single day, which was more than could be said for several people on the payroll who made 40 times his salary. What nobody knew, what Daniel had never once volunteered, was that before the gray coveralls and the mop bucket, he had spent 12 years as a trauma surgeon with the United States Army. He had operated in field tents in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. He had saved lives with his bare hands, with improvised tools, under fire, in the dark. And then one terrible night in a forward operating base outside Kandahar, a structural collapse had killed 2 members of his surgical team and left Daniel with a traumatic brain injury that stripped him of the ability to operate under bright surgical lights without debilitating seizures. The career was over. The identity was gone. He had come home to silence and paperwork, to a medical board that sympathized but couldn't reinstate him, to a small apartment and a cleaning job that at least kept his hands busy and his mind from going somewhere he couldn't return from. He had never told anyone. There didn't seem to be a reason. Until a 7-year-old girl in a blood-streaked dress changed everything. Her name was Lily Hargrove, and her mother was Elena Hargrove, CEO of Hargrove International, the company that occupied floors 12 through 20 of Meridian Tower. Elena had been a woman of extraordinary force, sharp, fair, respected, and quietly admired, even by rivals who had lost to her in boardrooms. What very few people knew was that Elena had recently ended a relationship with a man named Marcus Vell, a private equity partner with deep connections and a ferocious ego. The breakup had not been clean. Marcus had made threats that Elena had reported to her legal team but not to the police because she believed in handling things quietly. That morning in the parking structure below the tower, Marcus had stopped being a threat and become something far worse. Lily had been in the car with her mother. She had seen 2 men pull Elena out of the driver's seat. She had seen her mother hit the concrete. She had heard sounds no child should ever hear. And when one of the men had turned toward her, she had run through the stairwell door, up 3 flights, and into the lobby, because some animal instinct in her small body told her that the lobby was light and the parking garage was dark and that she needed to find the light. Daniel reached her in seconds. He didn't ask questions the way adults usually do. He didn't say calm down or slow down or what's happening. He dropped to his knees so his eyes were level with hers, held her small shoulders with the gentleness of someone who had once talked terrified soldiers through the worst moments of their lives, and let her tell him in her fractured, sobbing way what had happened. Parking garage, sub-level 2. Mommy is on the ground and she isn't getting up and there's so much red and the bad men might still be there. He was already moving before she finished the sentence. He told the frozen receptionist to call 911. He took the stairwell door at a dead sprint, and when he reached Elena Hargrove on the cold concrete floor of sub-level 2, unconscious, bleeding from a head laceration, with the shallow, irregular breathing pattern that Daniel recognized immediately as the signature of a serious traumatic brain injury complicated by a possible tension pneumothorax, every single year of surgical training came roaring back through his hands like electricity through a wire. The bad men were gone. It was just Daniel and Elena and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He worked with what he had. He used his belt to apply pressure. He used the clean interior of his work shirt to manage the head wound. He tilted her airway with a precision that looked, to the 2 security guards who arrived minutes later, like something they had only seen in medical dramas. He talked to her softly, steadily, the way he had talked to soldiers, telling her that she had a daughter upstairs who was brave and beautiful and needed her mother to fight. When the paramedics came down the ramp with their equipment and their training, one of them stopped mid-step and stared at Daniel's hands and said, "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He just gave them the rundown. Injury assessment, interventions performed, estimated time of unconsciousness, suspected secondary complications, in the clipped, precise language of a trauma surgeon, then stepped back and let them work, because that was what the moment required. Elena Hargrove survived. The neurosurgeon who reviewed her case said later that the airway management and hemorrhage control performed before the paramedics arrived had almost certainly been the difference between a difficult recovery and something no family should have to face. Marcus Vell was arrested within the hour, and the 2 men who had attacked Elena were found before nightfall, and in a hospital waiting room on the 4th floor. A little girl in a borrowed hospital blanket sat next to a man in a torn gray work shirt, and she held his large, rough hand in both of her small ones, and she didn't let go for a very long time. Lily asked him if he was a superhero. Daniel thought about it for a moment, really thought about it, and then said that he was just a person who had been given a gift a long time ago and had been waiting for the right moment to use it again. Lily told him that she thought that was the same thing. He didn't argue. Before we reach the end, we'd love to know, what moment in this story hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. Every single response reminds us why we keep telling these stories. Elena Hargrove, once she could speak, asked to meet the man who had saved her life. When they brought Daniel to her hospital room and she saw the gray coveralls, cleaned now, pressed by a nurse who had heard the story, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked him simply, "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" And Daniel looked out the window at the city below, at the ordinary, impossible world full of people passing each other every day without knowing what the other person carried, and he said that he supposed he hadn't known yet whether the person he used to be still lived inside him. He knew now. He knew now. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that heroes don't always wear the uniforms we expect, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Stories like Daniel's deserve to be heard, and so does yours.